What's up, crew? Welcome to Filming in Progress, the show that takes you backstage into the world of local businesses and the people who make them shine. Our guest today is James Boettcher. James is a distinguished leader in the natural foods industry, recognized for his commitment to empowering teams, customers, and partners. As the Chief Empowerment Officer at Righteous Gelato, James has a proven track record of success, with awards like the 2018 EY Entrepreneur of the Year, Top 40 Under 40 2013, Canada's Most Admired Corporate Cultures, and a certified Great Place to Work. James, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Excited to be here.
What a treat.
How'd you get here?
Like here today to work, you know? Brought my car. No, how did I get here? Well, I said this to you earlier. It's always a treat to sit down with you and chat because big fan of what you're building and all the good stuff. So thanks for having me. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Take me back to the beginning. How did this whole entrepreneurship endeavor come about?
Yeah, so many turns in the road, that's for sure. When I was younger, I always found a way to help put food on the table, and throughout my journey through school, I always sort of took up odd jobs, and one of the things was creating a freelance design agency when I was in high school. I thought, found Photoshop and Illustrator kind of cool, and always loved brand, and just picked up a few clients along the way, and one of them happened to be this little gelato shop that was emerging right around the time I had just graduated high school. It was an interesting sort of founding story of coming along with the gelato shop. But bringing you back kind of to the beginning, there was this shop that I thought I'd just be serving gelato and coffee out of, and the founder thought, you're really passionate about this, and he wanted to move on, so ended up taking this thing over, and lo and behold, a few years later, we're the number one selling gelato company in Canada, so pretty cool.
Right on.
Mm-hmm.
You said something off camera that really kind of, has sat with me for a while, and that's that you fell in love with the energy of that original shop.
Yeah.
Does that stay true to today? How do you embody that energy that you fell in love with and make sure that it's maintained these days? Yeah,
I think the biggest thing is a lot of great things in life create that energy, and so that could be music or food. I think when it comes to ice cream or gelato, kids pressed up against the glass, just enjoying themselves. It was something I knew I wanted to be a part of, and when the opportunity arose to take it over, I don't think I thought too much about it being winter for half the year in Calgary in my mid-20s as much as I did about the fun that could be sort of enjoyed. So,
right on. I know that when you found the gelato shop originally, it was called Fiasco, and now it's called Righteous. Can you walk me through kind of what that looked like? Yeah,
the name change. I mean, it's kind of sort of we've been around for a minute, but it's kind of one of those things that seemed like it was sort of abrupt, and in reality, it took a long time. So again, when I started out, we were just a scoop shop and had this name, and someone came along after us in the U.S. and called themselves Gelato Fiasco. So I always joke that they maybe didn't have Google back then, which is not true. But we knew they existed. They knew we existed, and they ended up taking in some outside money. And one of the guys was a trademark lawyer, so we had held the trademark. But I didn't know that in the U.S. you have to be active in the U.S. to hold it. So they made us forfeit it, and it got a bit complicated because we were both still small. And we got to this point where people were requesting us to come to the U.S. They loved the product or had experienced the brand, and we looked at, would it make sense to sort of acquire that whole company back and keep the name. Unfortunately, they had sort of copied a lot of the things we had done and did them maybe not as well as we thought, and so there was a lot of sort of emotion around, can we repurpose this? And I think at the end of the day, I sort of inherited the name, right? I acquired this company at a young age and didn't really love the name, to be honest. It it became this sort of signal for the challenges we were facing as an organization at different times. And I appreciate that, we were resilient through a lot of things in our early days, or even when we moved into our facility here. But it gave us a chance to sort of revisit if 6 letters really determined who we were. And a little bit of a fun nugget, my dog, who was alive at the time, became the mascot, and so his name was Shaka. And so we always had this sort of hang loose, good vibes sort of spirit. And so when we approached this idea of changing the name so that we could enter the U.S., that was sort of the default, was Shaka Gelato. So we threw it around a little bit, and we said there's probably something else there. And so when you walk into production, it says, quality means doing the right thing. And for our team, this idea of doing the right thing was always at sort of the center of who we are and what we stand for. And so that sort of started to snowball into these other ideas. And on the stairs going up to production, it says create something that'll make, or up to the offices, it says create something that'll make the world more awesome. And so this awesome and, Shaka and all these things. So grew up loving skate, surf, snow culture, and seeing enough guys do this and say righteous when they're pulling off a trick that, maybe was better than expected, or you knew it was going to be good. Was kind of, who we were. People taste our product all the time. And if it's their first time, we shot this whole thing with you, their first taste. And people are like, wow, this is impressive, And so by accident was watching Finding Nemo one night, and, Crush is going through the waves and says, righteous. And I'm just like, there it is, And so did a bit of discovery on it, and kind of got the team to say, this really is who we are. So to begin again as righteous was pretty special for us. And I think a lot of our close fans were excited about the new name, and those that didn't know us loved the name. And at the end of the day, we didn't change too much about, the architecture of the packaging. And so when I advise people, I ask them to, think about what really matters to the fan in the process. And for us, it was, what we do in the community and what we stand for, and a great product, and this clear jar with a black lid. And so I always joke that, that would be the second choice for a name, is clear jar, black lid. Easy to relate to, but was a lot harder before we did it. And then after, there was so much relief and freedom. So now we're in the U.S. We have about 600 retailers that carry our product, and everywhere in Canada. And it's pretty righteous.
Right on, right on. So from 2009, when you were just a single scoop shop in Calgary, to now 2023 it is, right? That's it's a big change to go from a single scoop shop to a CPG brand that's all across North America. One of the things I find interesting is that your packaging is all transparent, which you just touched on. Talk to me about how important that is, not only from a product perspective, but also how does that transparency kind of value seep into the rest of your brand?
Yeah, and I talked a little bit about emulation earlier, and I think there's an opportunity for brands to showcase that in their packaging. So you see it when an eco-friendly brand like Ten Tree or something like that, they do a good job of making sure that permeates, whether it's the tag that it's on or where it's manufactured. And so for us, plastic's got a pretty bad rap these days, and so we have to consider that, and we're using some post-consumer materials within it. And in our cafe or on the trucks, it's always compostable because we can do that. Unfortunately, we can't put a compostable package on the freezer shelf. It would disintegrate before it got home with you. But that clearness for us is twofold. One is you get to see what's inside, and you don't have to play a guessing game. Not a lot of people know, but when ice cream pints are made, they get flipped upside down. And so if there's any air bubbles, it's always at the bottom. So you'd never see it until you either cut it in half or it melts away. And for us, we've got to have this attention to detail where you can see the product. The color's got to be vibrant, which is all natural for us. And then at the end, you've got this beautiful vessel to repurpose. And so we have recyclerighteous.com or recyclehappiness.com. And you can go on there and see some photos that people have reused our containers. So it's kind of cool to know that, this joy comes from the packaging even after it's done. I think back to my early days of falling in love with brands and keeping a Nike shoebox or even your iPhone, this beautiful vessel that you didn't want to discard, but really it was, just recycling material. So I think there's that, and then also the freshness of the product. When you can reseal it, keeps fresher for longer. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be hundreds of thousands, if not more, ice cream gelato brands out in the world, Canada, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
What makes yours stand out from the rest?
Yeah, I say often that our brand is kind of this unfolding. Tony Hsieh has a quote that's, great brands are always a story that, keeps unfolding. And for us, I think you might identify with the beautifulness of the package on the shelf, or if you come by and visit the team, you might fall in love with the energy or sort of how you feel and how you're treated. And I think all these attributing factors lead to this discovery of the brand. So it's kind of like an onion. You peel back one layer, then the next, then the next. And I think for our company, we've been fortunate enough to continue to parlay this energy or story or values sort of connection to people that they keep coming back for more. At the end of the day, I know that we make the best product, and I would say there's a lot of great products out there. But what I think keeps people coming back more than anything, even our B Corp certification or what we stand for, is how good the product is. And I think that's a really important lesson for a lot of brands. They sort of hinge on the values piece or, their community give back. And I would say those are all amazing things. And at the end of the day, the product has to stand up or perform to the level that people expect it to. So I think our goal is always to exceed expectation. And when I try a product from someone else, I'm sometimes delighted with how good it is. But I often am, if they've got a really good values-based story or something, sometimes that doesn't align to the quality. So I just think make the best product possible, and people will fall in love with that. And then the other pieces of the brand can start to tell those stories. So
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You started that by quoting Tony Hsieh.
Yeah.
For those viewers who don't know who Tony Hsieh is,
Sure.
Tell me about that. And then also, you recently received an award called the Tony Hsieh Award.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Pretty wild. So for those that don't know Tony in Canada mostly, Tony was the founder of Zappos.com. And so early on in my career, I discovered a book he had written called Delivering Happiness. And there's a long story behind it, but he got to a point where he just wanted to create this level of customer service that was so above and beyond, and in the process, create a workplace that people would love to come to. So at a very young age in my career, this was 2011, I realized, we could do something similar to that. And why couldn't we was really the question. There's 1,000 people working at Zappos when I went there, and I think we had 8 people. You might have been one at the time. So it was pretty cool to just see this thing in real life. And Tony's always been an inspiration. He's thought differently. He's really pushed the boundaries a lot of the time. Most notably launched Holacracy within their organization. But at the end of the day, he's just a hero for me in the business sense, because he challenged the way that business exists. And I think what I learned the most from him was that, business doesn't have to be business and adhere to those principles as much as business is people. And, if we treat each other the way we want to be treated and act in sort of the best way possible for those involved, that good things will happen. So yeah, Tony tragically and unexpectedly passed away in 2020. And it was hard. There's so many people we encounter, whether that's loved ones or people in the public eye that we identify with. Another one would be Anthony Bourdain as well, that teach you a lot, and they don't even know that they've taught you these things. And so shortly after we got a new dog, Shaka had passed away about 2 years before, year and a half. And I asked my wife if we could name him Tony, because I'm a big believer in sort of spiritual energy and these things that exist in the world. energy is never created nor destroyed, just repurposed, right? And so I have this embodiment of Tony, and not a day goes by where I don't think about him and try to put into practice all the lessons I've learned. So yeah, at the gathering just a few weeks ago, they have a gala, and they nominate all these brands that are larger than life, like NFL and Marvel and stuff. And they presented me with this award called the Tony Award. And the definition of the award is someone that's living on Tony's legacy, sort of on the fringe, doing their own thing, sort of taking those lessons and making them even better in some ways. So pretty special, and feel honored. And I think one of my last things was promising, that we would continue to do that great work and try to change the world through great employment practices. And I think not going to business school, not having an MBA, never really working for a big corporation. I did for like a hot minute one time. Left there, I left my tie on my desk on day 87. True story. Allows me to sort of have that childish sort of approach to corporate culture. I think that kids get to dream and color outside the lines and be far more creative. And I think every time I get stuck on a decision, I just think about, creating a company that I'd want to work for, or I'd want my mom or dad to work for, or you to work for, and try to just have a better impact on the world than others. So.
Right on. And you just so happen to do it via Gelato.
Yeah, pretty lucky actually. I think about that a lot. It's like, I kind of joke with the team sometimes. It's like if we made staplers, they'd be rad staplers. So many colors, lifetime guarantee. It'd always work. If it didn't, you'd call us, we'd hook you up. And the world would be better, because staplers kind of suck right now. So
yeah, fair
there's
enough.
a free business idea. We're not going to do water bottles. Yeti showed up. They did a good job. Or coolers, they're killing the game. We love them. But I think that's, when you find a great product, like I just brought up Yeti, serving a purpose of something very simple, but at the end of the day, over delivering on the expectation or quality. And from the people I know that work for that company, they're ride or die. And I think that's always the testament. Companies can look good on the product side sometimes, but not have the alignment on the culture side. And I hope that everyone realizes it's possible. It might make a few less dollars than the corporations at the end of the day, paying fat bonuses to folks. But there's a more enjoyable version of business where you take care of people. So absolutely.
Yeah, see, you told the story of how you kind of fell into entrepreneurship, really. Were you always entrepreneurial? Did that start at a young age? What did that look like?
Yeah, I grew up in Woodlands, which off camera you and I have shared often. So for those listening or viewing, kind of a crazy story. The street I grew up on is the street that Aiden grew up on. Yeah. Different circumstances, but kind of a cool kindred sort of spirit story. Down in Woodbine or Woodlands, we didn't have a lot, and sometimes we didn't have power. So my dad and I would go to the Woodbine Safeway and jerry-rig the locks on the green bins, the recycling bins, and I'd climb inside and get a few bottles out, and we'd take them back to the bottle depot on Horton Road, and that was kind of, I think,
Road.
Yeah, that was kind of the reality for me, is at a young age, not knowing any better, just realizing like if there's a will, there's a way, and not having a lot growing up, and then not having even the idea or understanding that it was strange that we were doing this, or different. I shouldn't even say strange. I think parlayed into a lot of things. So when I was young, I saw a kid shoveling the walk through my window and grabbed a shovel. I think I was like 8 years old, and asked the next person, how much will you pay me? And it was $2 at the time. I had some kid come by last week. He wanted to charge me $20 for my sidewalk. I was like, ooh, inflation. It was wild. But yeah, just getting into that, and then my sort of famous one with my friends was I put on my first punk rock show at the Maltese when I was 14, and made a couple $100 and sold out the show, and a lot of word of mouth marketing and bands that everybody liked to see. And from there I started a distro, so it was called Lonely Street Records. I was super emo, my hair was across my face and nails painted and all that, but
No, right on.
I would consign bands CDs and records for, they'd sell them to me for $8 and I'd sell them for 11. And so I had this thing where you'd come to a show and you might have missed the band a couple weeks prior, and I would then have the record and you could buy it. And that was like, again, I was way sort of ahead of my time on business, but I think what I always sort of come back to was everything sort of tied back to like doing something good or trying to help in some way to build community. And so throughout my journey, it just kind of always came to that. So whether it was my, makeshift design agency, or they used to call me Skipper at Sunterra, my first job when I was 14, because I'd be there on a Thursday and it'd be like a PD day or whatever. I'd take the bus to work and help my dad at the store. And I think I always like to be busy. I like the idea that, again, the great thing about money is you can always make more. And when you have a few bucks in your pocket, you can, change your own life in a major way, and it doesn't have to be eccentric. And then you can afford the opportunity to do things for others as well. So, yeah, I think I always encourage that, like at an early age, whether you have a brother, sister, right? There's always a job, and you just got to find someone that's going to give them a shot. And I got my shot from a guy named Tim Douglas on my 14th birthday, and I think I look to repay that favor every day. So,
Awesome.
You touched a little bit on community there, and I know that's a super important piece for Righteous and you ultimately. Has that always been the case? What's the foundation of your community, and why is it so important?
Yeah, great question. Again, growing up in low-income housing, there was some public services. We used the food bank as an example. And so I think consciously or even subconsciously, I knew these things existed. And as soon as I had the sort of means or opportunity to, I don't like the term give back. It's weird because it's accurate for me, but I don't think it's that for everyone. So I like to use the word like investment. I learned this from a lady named Lucy Miller one time from United Way, and it's like give back implies that you took something, but the reality is that more often than not, you're just looking to invest in that community. And so I think it was pretty early on that we identified we could do something in our community. And one of the early ones was when the floods happened in 2013, and saying what can we do? And we just started this food truck agency called YYC Food Trucks. So we helped rally a lot of the trucks to go down and feed first line responders, and the Gelato truck, because it wasn't so much gelato time during the floods. We served soup and coffee and just tried to help out that way, and then created some products that got listed with Calgary Co-op, and we had this values alignment and raised some money for them. And at the center of our company, we've always just found a way to support organizations. And as we've grown, we've formalized it a bit more into 4 pillars. So ending domestic violence, because you can end it, and I think that's important. Reducing poverty. So the reason for reducing versus ending is that some people want to live in poverty, and it's not our choice whether they do or don't. I think we always seek to help those on the fringe, like my dad was when I was young, supporting grassroots organizations. And so we look at a lot of that stuff around the BLM movement, or now a lot of stuff around DEI, and really a call to action for organizations not to just have a one-size-fits-all strategy to supporting community, but also realize there's underserved communities within the community. And then last but not least, just anything to do with kids. I mean, at the end of the day, I make ice cream, and we call it gelato, which is a fancy version of it. But it's enjoyable. And I think at the end of the day, like, we've just got this wicked opportunity to do that. So this year, I think we're up to 175 organizations we've supported in some way, shape, or form. I met somebody at the gathering while I was receiving the award, and she worked for the Calgary Food Bank, and she said every time Righteous showed up, she always wanted to be there to give it to they call them clients, but people like my dad and I when I was younger. And I always joke like that was the pizza pops for me when I was younger. If I got pizza pops in our hamper, I was so jazzed. And to know that Righteous is doing that is pretty impressive. So.
How do you decide what to give to? There's so many great organizations doing so many great things and so much great work. How do you make that decision?
Yeah, I think if I were to sort of systemize it a little bit more as advice, sort of I'll add a lesson and some context, but I think the organization, or if you're a solopreneur or whatever, it's got to resonate with you. I don't think you should just support things because they don't. So everything that we support in one way, shape, or form aligns with those pillars. I mean, when you say anything to do with kids, almost everything does in some way. And it's got to resonate with the team. Like, it can't just be about me. And that's where, the custodian job title comes from. The custodian of culture is, I want it to be about more than me. And I've always sort of encouraged the team to share what's important to them. We do get asked for a lot, and sometimes we politely decline. I think the decision to support or not to support for us really comes down to what's the ask. We got to a point where we created an online form, and the reason was you get an email and someone would blast it off to like 200 companies. And they say, hey, fill out this form, and they never fill it out. And so you're like, okay, if you can't fill out a form, I can't really help you, kind of thing. Like, you got to put in a little bit of work. But more often than not, we hear these amazing stories about how, Righteous was involved in something that had to do with something important to us and how it resonated, like I said, with the food bank. I think as we continue to evolve, we've got a thing called the Community Investment Cohort. We're evaluating how we maybe go a little bit deeper and not as wide. And so we're trying to best understand, how we show up in the world and have a tremendous impact on sort of one focal point. So like Patagonia, 1% for the planet, it's very focused. That for us, in turn, we invest 1% of our total revenue back into the communities we serve. So we're asking, is it best tied to a purchase? For every pint sold kind of idea. We invest this. Now we live in a day and age too where, people are a little bit apprehensive to talk about the work they're doing because they don't want to, be virtue signaling or get judged on that. I'm still, like, if it's consistent, I'm a huge fan. And I think when a company like Shaw donates $1 million to the Red Cross during the floods, like, I'm in their corner. Like, someone might judge that, like they're just trying to signal something. I said, well, they still had to give $1 million to the Red Cross. So,
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, my cues would be, make sure it resonates with you and your organization and your team. Be confident in the impact you're having. Like, it's bigger than I think a lot of people realize. And have some fun with it. Like, whenever we had done the breakfast program or been in the drop-in or serving dinner at the Mustard Seed or all these things, like, you get to interact with folks that generally people don't say hi to, and I think those are always the touching moments where you add some dignity to the equation and help inspire others to do it. And the other thing I'll add is we call it our giving gang, but it's our investment in community. So every team member has 20 hours that they can get paid to do work in the community, and we often orchestrate things so it's easier for people. Not a lot of people know how to volunteer as well. And with that, we see people's families come along, or friends or loved ones, and I think, again, opening it up so it's a bit wider has a great impact where they can take that back to their community too and continue to further it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's so many great outcomes of doing this work, right? Like, it builds, obviously, the giving back piece, which, for lack of better term.
No, it's good. It's the right term a lot of the time.
Yeah, so. Yeah, but also the side that you're building more culture in your own organization as well, right? The people that are doing this together are, learning more about each other, learning more about giving back, doing all these things that are just positive in general. So.
And I said something provocative in my keynote at the gathering too. I said, people don't really realize that giving, not giving back, maybe just giving, is somewhat selfish. You know, we underestimate the power of doing good in the world. I think you could agree, and most would, that when you do those things, you feel really good. You feel, you know, this dopamine hit of you know, life is hard and I've done something good with my time or resources. And so I think just calling attention to that doing good also serves you, shouldn't be lost on people. I think mental health, you know, it's very prevalent now, and that might be a coping mechanism for someone to be active in the community or involved in different ways. And I said it before, but something as simple as, you know, treating somebody with dignity. You know, it's not about the money you donate or the hours you invest, but just making somebody feel valued or loved can go a long way. So we do Big Brothers Big Sisters. We like write cards. We're pen pals with some folks, which is pretty rad. You have to go through like a police check and stuff. It's pretty crazy. And we got a seniors one that we're just teeing up for Christmas, where we just write Christmas cards to like seniors, and like that costs no money. There's no like ROI. There's no measurements on this stuff, but like the team loves it 'cause they know they're bringing joy to somebody, and that's again why everybody is a part of this. At the end of the day, they might get paid well and love their free gelato or lunch every day, but I think the values alignment keeps people invested in the business. And I think, to your point, that's a unintended outcome, I call it. Like I didn't say let's do work in the community so we can have a retention strategy for people. We just do work in the community, and the unintended outcome is that people feel like their values and their purpose for being sort of belongs here. And again, don't get too like sharp on the measurement piece, because I think sometimes it's like, well, you know, what does this look like on a P&L and balance sheet? And I hope before I pass at some point in my life, we've added a third one. So you got your income statement, you got your balance sheet, and then you got this, you know, return on community or your return on the world. And, you know, how do we measure that? So
Incredible.
Yeah.
All of these things we've discussed so far really point towards the strength of culture in your organization. And it's interesting to me, you choose to go with fairly non-traditional titles, right? Talk
For
to me
sure.
about those titles. I mean, we already discussed the Chief Empowerment Officer, but I know
Yeah.
there's Custodian of Culture. Like, why?
Yeah, I was on a call today, ironically, and it came up that this company we were talking about didn't have traditional titles or none at all. And I think there's sort of two things to consider, because there's a lot of critics when it comes to it. One is that external facing, sometimes you need them, right? So I, unfortunately, for investors or the bank, have to be the CEO. But I never went to school for being a CEO. I've never been a CEO before. And so early on, I was like, how do I not be serious about the serious title? And so originally it was Gelato Aficionado, and then like I was like non-CEO, like not a thing. And then I stumbled upon this like aha moment of like Chief Empowerment Officer, because that's really what I do every day. It's not, I'm not an executive officer where I'm like telling people what to do. I'm just giving them, you know, a canvas and some guidance and asking good questions and supporting them. And then the other one that I mentioned earlier was Custodian of Culture, and that's been one of my favorites, because it's the evolution of the culture that gets to this point where the culture really isn't me, or like I don't own the culture. The culture is the sum of all the parts, and once in a while the team will make a bad decision, and it's like clean up on aisle 6, and I got to come by with the mop bucket and mop it up as a custodian would, and make it look, make sense again, and then we continue on. So I think that's one of my more prouder titles. But Shannon's is like director of WOW. There are some roles where they are a little bit more traditional, like finance, but even back in your day, partner relations specialist. Customers are not customers to us, they're partners, and I think it's just asking, what are you really looking to achieve? One of the things that I think is important as I've grown in understanding other people's careers, though, is that they do need to tie it back to a true title. If they go on to pursue a new career or are looking for something new that they need a title. So you can have both, is what I would say, and don't take yourself too seriously.
It's the biggest thing, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Right
Yeah.
on. You said something in there that resonates, and it was along the same concept as, don't give somebody the food, but teach them how to fish. I forget exactly how that saying goes.
Sure.
But I'm curious as to, you were talking about how you ask the right questions to empower your staff and those around you. How does one learn how to do that? I think that's a super valuable skill that a lot of people don't.
I think in my journey and what I experience sometimes with others is, as humans, we're always trying to showcase our intelligence. There's this inadequacy we feel in a lot of spots, and what that attributes to is maybe asking less questions and trying to signal evidently, that we have knowledge. And so instead of asking questions that even we might know the answer to, we decide that we're just going to say it out loud. And so many companies, I won't say most, but many companies act that way. Someone's got this vision, and then they've got their idea of how it's going to be executed, and then they end up in the spot where they hire really intelligent, smart, talented people, and instead of hiring them for those things, they hire them to tell them how to do things. And I think there's sort of this comedy around it for me. It's like, I don't know very much. I might know some things better than others, but even if I have a clear vision of how I want to do something, unless I ask someone who's going to execute it or play a role in the creative sort of side to it, what their take is, I might miss something. And so I think that's sort of the tragedy of teams these days. And there's like so many words that came to mind, like talent or HR or like all these, I just want to vomit sometimes, but I'm just like, man, like you're like, think about your team. You got like people that are really good at what they do. You weren't like, oh, this guy sucks, let's hire him and like hope it works out, So I think when you get to a point, and this is probably a confidence thing, or removing of ego thing, where even when you know the answer, you can ask the question. And so I'll even take it like super far, like be talking to somebody new and they'll be excited and they'll be like, oh, I went to the Taylor Swift movie. I was like, who's Taylor Swift? And then they're like, what? And then they'll like explain to me who Taylor Swift is. And obviously I know who Taylor Swift is, but it's just so funny to like be in that moment where it's like, I didn't have to signal something. And when you ask people, even if they won't even believe you that you don't know the answer, they might tell you their version of it. And I think that it takes a lot of practice. So that's why sometimes I joke, and Mandy will make fun of me in public because she's like, why would you do that? I'm honestly, I'm just trying to like have that energy around me that it's not like I know the answer. Like if you ask me and you want to know the answer, then I'll obviously give you the answer. Like if you're asking me directions to somewhere, I'm not going to be like, what do you think? Which way do you think the saddle dome is? Yeah. But in practice, when you get people to answer their own questions, I think they almost always know the answer. That's another funny part of the whole thing. They're just looking for some validation too. So,
do all people react positively to that approach in your experience?
I mean, you asked a pretty like general question. Like 60% of the time, it works all the time. I'm sure it doesn't always work. What I do know to be true is when you get in a habit of supplying answers, your team may fall into a habit of not challenging themselves enough because they know that you will sort of do that. And so I would say, vulnerably for my team, in the creative process, sometimes we end up there. because that's something I'm very sort of attached to. But it doesn't mean that I'm not asking them. So I'll give you an example. So hopefully by the time this airs, call Righteous, and I want you to tell me if the voicemail you hear is righteous. And we had to call the office recently on a trip, and I was with the marketing team. We called, we got the voicemail, and I just like hung up the phone, and I was like, out of 10, how good was that? 6 out of 10. And you're like, shit, like what a easy opportunity to get something so right, and we sort of missed the mark. And then I don't know what it would be, but I this is sort of a big tangent, but I think it's like the idea that I buy gelato. Like I go to the store and I buy gelato. People are like, why would you buy it? You get it all for free. And I'm like, I want to take it off the shelf. I want to know how that goes. I want to get to the till. I want to see if the cashier asks me, why are you buying this? Or like, you know, like undercover boss a little bit. And then I get to tell this story again of like, oh, it's my favorite product. I'm a huge fan. And they're like, I've never had it. You know, it's too expensive or whatever. And then I get to give them a coupon and say, you know, next one's on me kind of idea. But I think too many brands get complacent or leaders get complacent where they don't experience their own brand. So that was sort of a tangent away from your question about the response of prodding for an answer. And I think the more that we encourage people to be free thinking and to like own their voice, it's a big one. And maybe I'll add one more thing just because I thought about it. So we're going through planning right now, and there's a lot of complexity because the economic environment and yada, yada, yada. So I said to the team on the last call, I said, I want everyone to send me what they would like for 24 selfishly for the company and for themselves. And then someone said, well, like, what's the point? Like, what's the purpose? And I said, because I want to know that there's alignment in what it is that you want for this organization. So it's not like I have a democratic company, but their opinion, voice, desires, wants, needs all apply. And I will tell you unanimously, the team shared some pretty simple things, you know, a little bit of relief, a little bit of less stress around growth, some resource things that, you know we need to upgrade or improve. But that sort of call to action of something can really change the game. And selfishly, it's like, now I don't have to guess. Like I was like, okay, here's my list. And I said this when I accepted the Tony Award. You know, I didn't start a company to have people come work for me. I think a lot of my life I felt this way, and I started it where I could serve others, and that comes in so many forms here, right? It's like as an employer, as a leader, as a mentor, all the customers we serve, all the partners in our business. Like there's a chance for us to show up for a lot of people, and I think that's what I get the most joy out of in life. So.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. You touched on it a couple times there, you know, going into a store and pretending you're a customer or, you know, getting that feedback from your staff or your customers. How do you, obviously to create a great product, you need to take feedback and you need to act on that feedback and improve your product and all of these different things. How do you foster that constant improvement mentality, both within your team, but also, you know, getting that out of your customers?
Yeah, two thoughts come to mind. One is capability. So I think about like online banking a little bit. So I love context. So banks have unlimited resource, and all they really need to do, airlines is another example, all they really need to do is turn to their best competitor and say, what are they doing better? And so this comes back to resource. Can we do that? Are we capable of doing that? And if you answer yes to all those things, then why wouldn't you just do that? I think as a small business, so, you know, a lot of friends in the community, whether it's coffee or local laundry or whoever, right? At some point, there's a resource constraint. Where can you manufacture? What are the minimum quantities? Do you make it yourself? Yada, yada, yada. There's so many things. So then it's getting honest with, you know, what are we doing today that sort of fosters us to get to that place? I think to your point of the mentality around it, asking that question to the team is, like the voicemail thing, is this our best work? So for us, I'm sure there was a time where the gelato just was pretty okay. And we probably had to do a lot of work in the community and foster this energy around, we want to support those guys, they're doing a good job. But nowadays it's like we have some of the best equipment. Our manufacturing facility has all the certifications, the quality, the safety, everything is just like A1. And we taste all the competition very often. Like there's a freezer over there that's loaded with everyone else. And so we taste it and we're like, is it really good? If not, why not? Should we do this? Can we do it better? So like a flavor like coffee, it's like people love Haagen-Dazs coffee. And we're like, can we do it better? And I'll leave it up to you to tell me if we did. Cookies and cream, everybody wanted inclusions. They loved their Ben & Jerry's experience. How can we do that? Again, we need some more equipment to go as far as Ben & Jerry's has gone on the inclusions. Those are the pieces in the gelato. But I think if you have a reference point and you have the resource, then there's no reason not to be able to do that. So I think teaching that, I say repetition is retention. And so I think in everything you do, it's gotta somewhat exist. So I don't know how you felt when you came into the cafe earlier, you come into the space, but if it doesn't align with who we are, you would feel it. And I think that that consistency is what sort of breeds or manifests that mentality. So, yeah.
Interesting. You're talking about flavors and improvement, that sort of thing. And you also touched on your creative process a little bit earlier. Let's explore that. What does the creative process look like at Righteous?
Yeah, I think, pretty early on, everyone's sort of invited to voice their opinion or say what they love or don't love about the things that we do, which can extend far beyond just flavors. We do a little bit of market research. We understand sort of what's working, what's not for other people. I always say you don't have to be first, you just have to be best. And so, again, back to the resource, we would love tomorrow to have a bunch of bars and cones and all the things that people love to hold with one hand and hold their phone in the other. We call them one-handers now. But we don't have that equipment yet. And so we've got to get to a point where we can do that. When it comes to new flavors, we launched blueberry limeade, which no one else makes that flavor. And the reason we did is because we knew it tastes so good. Our reference point is raspberry lime. People love that flavor. Yeah, we do a good job on the fruit-based sorbets or sorbettos. And sometimes it isn't the right decision. So coffee, I love. The sales are not where Haagen-Dazs are yet. So, there's maybe a super loyal following. I don't think it has to do with flavor, but maybe a bit of that obscureness has served us well. No one's doing raspberry lime or mango pineapple or those types of flavors. We're super honest in the process about taste. So we do like a ton of tasting internally because we are our best critics. We have professional taste testers. So they come by, they pick up a kit, and it's got all these just numbered things, and we declare if there's anything to be worried about, if there's milk, like a small allergen.
How does one get certified in that?
Yeah, well, it's fun. I mean, you can apply online, and it's so fun when people come by too, because it's like all walks of life, like every age, gender, identification, and they just like get hooked up, and then they get to provide some information back. So one thing we definitely do not do is get caught up in the hype. So we've never made a keto flavor, and Halo Top was huge for a while, non-existent now in a lot of ways. But I think answering for ourselves, we're proud of this product. We know it's delicious. We're proud of it. Those are the pieces. But again, it's very democratic. There's a lot of people involved in the team. Literally everyone at some point. So we do team lunch every day, and usually tastings of new products will happen around that. And then the constant improvement comes in big time. So a flavor that we might have thought was good 2 or 3 years ago, we're always trying to find a way to make it better. because I think what's sort of great today is only good tomorrow, and that's what competitors do. They try to copy something you did well yesterday, not what you're doing today or tomorrow too. So, yeah. But a lot of gelato. People always ask, how often do you eat gelato? And I say almost every day. So.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Wow. Right.
So good. Yeah, I'm not like smashing a pint, but definitely tasting. And well stocked at home. I got like literally a drawer that's only gelato in the house.
You
too.
need to.
Yeah.
Be questioning it if you didn't.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when you go to a Palace house and you bring some gelato, and they're like, "Oh, I'll just put this in the freezer." They're like, no, don't touch. And then you open it, you roll it back, you're like, "What the?" And they're like, "Oh man, I love that flavor." So like, so delicious, makes this coconut, cashew, salted caramel. And I'm like, we're coming for you. Yeah. That's the next flavor.
Hey, that's good. There's the constant improvement mentality. Just go to more dinner parties.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I mean, even if they watch this, I would tell whoever's in charge, Mr. So Delicious. It's all right, but it could be better, man. Like, and that's the thing, is that I think these big CPG companies, their first metric of products they create is price. Can we make it like here's the threshold? And for us, we start with flavor, taste, quality, then we price it, and then we say, okay, what do we need to do to get to this point? So like if I put 10 million raspberries in a pint, or I don't know what the ratio is that's proper, one's gonna make sense for the business and one is just obscene, right? So there's a balance between, it's like when dishes are too salty or like things, like there's a balance of things. And so just starting with a great product. And we made products that we can't, like dairy pistachio. We did plant-based pistachio, which was great, but there's not a big market there. But like our dairy pistachio or like our gelato hazelnut pistachio, they're just so expensive. Like we can't sell it and make it make sense for the business. So we have some thresholds on costing. But usually the team works super hard to make sense of it and decide on things. So,
you ever released a flavor that was just an absolute flop?
Yeah, lots. I mean, back in the day, we used to get to do pretty cool stuff in the restaurants and like have fun with chefs, and there's some crazy stuff out there. But blueberry basil, still like my ride or die. I love it. People love it. Like it's like the off-color Air Jordans. Like everyone who loves it, and then other people will be like, that was dumb. Like, why'd you do that? So there's again, in the CPG world, there's a level of expectation of velocity or turns, how many sell, and sometimes things are a bit too unique there. Watermelon mint was another one that was just slapped. It was so good. It was so good. But again, it was like, I think a bit of the consistency, there's a lot of water in it, so it was a bit harder than we would have liked. Yeah, it's interesting sometimes, like frozen hot chocolate right now, we're winding down for a minute. It's taking a pause, because the marshmallow ingredient has this like 0.001 thing that is rated by the FDA as like unsafe. It's like, oh my gosh, like, okay, so like we're super religious about inputs, so ingredients, like no one should really have a question about it. Like there's nothing artificial. We're like so serious about it, and so when it gets sort of flagged, that's like, okay, well, what are our other options on this? And until we can honor that, we just said, we're gonna pause this one, and so might come back with no marshmallows, but we'll see.
Just frozen hot chocolate without marshmallows. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah. Add your own.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, that's fun. You mentioned early on in the kind of come up story, if you will, you're no stranger to facing adversity. I'm curious how you approach, unexpected or hardships that you can't control.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I think I alluded to it early on. I feel weirdly fortunate that there was a lot when I was younger. So I've always sort of talked about being resilient as a bit of a muscle. So you got to flex it enough to understand that it works. And I mean, there's all kinds of books out there about Navy SEALs and, when you think you're going to die, you're only 60% dead, and like all this stuff, right? So I think for anyone realizing that when you're going through tough times, it's serving a greater purpose, has always resonated with me. And so, for example, we were almost out of business before we started the fire in 2009, and then went through a lot of challenges during the floods, and then a recession there too, and then the fire in 2015 in our facility. I think that was one of the hardest ones, but all those moments sort of gave us the strength to overcome some tough stuff. So when the pandemic started, it was like everyone scrambling, like, how do you react? How do you show up for your people? What do you do? What's happening to the business community? All this stuff. And I felt like, we didn't have one, but it's like we took a playbook off the shelf. Like, okay, we've been here before, unforeseen circumstances, imperfect, one day at a time, keep the energy and the vibes high, focus on the team, make sure that, communication, transparency, all those things sort of exist. And I think it's just, we wish as humans we understood this more, but there's lots of things we can't control. And sometimes we just have to not succumb to them, but say, what within this framework can we control? So I think for myself and for the organization, there was a thing I did one time where I'm in a room of people, a bunch of young kids actually. It's for a school, and I said, how many people in this room have felt like they've had one of the most dark days of their life that they never thought they'd survive it? Everybody raised their hand. Janitor, everybody's raising their hand. And I said, guess what? You're still here. So I think there's a lot of dark moments for people, and even more palpable now with all the mental health sort of rising to the top. It's not like it wasn't there, but it became quite pervasive and even safe to speak about since the pandemic. And so I think just encouraging that sometimes you just need to take a rest and come back tomorrow and control what you can. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because people react differently in all of these scenarios, right? Like, you have extremes on all ends, and then you have the people that, it's different for everybody how they react to these circumstances. As a leader, how do you maintain your composure, when you're feeling those hardships personally as well?
Yeah. I said a quote in our video sort of talking about the fire back in 2016, and I just said it, and it's always sort of stuck with me as the answer to that question. The moments when you feel like, it's the darkest for you, especially as a leader, you'll look around and someone will look you in the eye, and you'll know that you need to be there for them. And so back to my sort of reason for being or my style of leadership, I think being able to show up for others in those moments is what gets me through them. And I think, again, it's not like being in a position where you're not honest that you may not make it through, or that you're like, don't worry guys, like that's not the attitude people need. They just need to be seen and heard and understood, and know that there's a bit of a plan, I think, a lot of the times, because they trust you, right? And I think that's what's probably served me the most, is transparency, honesty, and vulnerability, and consistency, I think, is what has got us through a lot of those times too.
So, I'm always curious as to how somebody shows up 100% every day.
You think I show up 100% every day?
What does that look like?
You think so? Oh man, that's a compliment and a half. Yeah, I mean, I think so. Maybe I'll repurpose it a little bit. Someone said to me not too long ago. They said, "You always got a smile on your face. Why do you think that is?" Because there are days where I show up and people are like, how are you? I'm like, seen better days, kind of thing. I might still be smiling though. And I think the reason I have that energy is a lot of gratitude. I think, again, sharing a little bit about my journey today with you, and you knew a lot before that. Like, my life is a total gift. Like, I should have ended up in low-income housing in Ogden and maybe hung out with not so favorable people and maybe made some bad decisions and used my entrepreneur skills to sell things that were not legal yet, which I never did. So I guess now it's not so illegal. No, just kidding. But the reality for me is I feel so lucky to have I joke, like I have all my limbs. I can see in color. I developed a sense of humor somewhere in my life that has been fun to share with others. I'm very loved. I feel very connected to the people I get to work with. I hired my dad. That's pretty cool. Just like everything is just like pretty cool. And even when it's hard, like it's so hard, there's like such hard days. I still get to come back to this idea that I'm like so lucky. So I think that's the smile. The smile is like, I even getting to sit here with you, or the times when we hang out, like I get to hang out with you. Like that's awesome for me. 'Cause it could have been so different at so many points in time. So yeah, it's the gratitude smile. So yeah.
I feel like that smile is so many people look up to it. Speaking to, and you alluded to this just now, but success in general, what does that mean to you? What does that look like to you? How do you gauge it?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to cut that, like whether you're talking about wealth or success or pride even. I think it's got to be different for everyone. It's like someone trying to describe love. Like, what is love? Like, there's a dictionary definition for all of these things, but it's different for everyone based on their lived experiences. And I would say, for me, success already exists because I get to play a role in so many people's lives. And hopefully it's been almost always positive. I don't always get it right. And I think that's a big part of success for me. I get to, I'm able, I think that's a fortunate thing. I'm aging a bit, and I'm trying to make sure I don't forget to do yoga every once in a while. Freedom is a big one for me. I think that being able to be an entrepreneur and decide some things like you would know, I work a lot, and I also get to choose when I do that work a lot of the time. Having an impact in community, not for my benefit, but as a gesture to doing something good in the world. So I think there's a lot there, but at the end of the day, I think it comes down to choice and getting to choose to do the things that I've got to do in my life. So
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that choice is so important, and it's so not everybody has that. So I would agree that success is it's a great measure.
Yeah. And I think it'll always be measured by there's that old quote, it's like people won't remember what you did, they'll remember how you made them feel. And so for me, in a similar but different way, I hope that whatever it is that we do, serve community, employ great humans, provide a window into the future, teach them new skills, allow them to be themselves, whatever that looks like, that at the end of the day, it had a better impact. So it's the idea of like, leave it better than you found it kind of ideas. Yeah.
What's next?
I'm a live in the moment guy. Like I've always got this, especially pre-pandemic, like this crazy vision. And I think the trials and tribulations of the last few years have sort of reframe that. If not, I'm responsible for thinking, 1, 3, 5 years from now, for the business. But personally, I think it's enjoying the moments one day at a time. I have no doubt that we'll continue to make an impression in the U.S. and that'll create more opportunities to create impact in the world. I think there's so many wild ways that we can, take this thing. So Virgin has always been the sort of the landmark, but it's like whatever told this guy that he could, one day have an airline and the next day have a cruise line and the next day have a record label or not, like all these things. And so I think the idea of never stop dreaming is a big one. I do think that I want to keep righteous in the mix, whether it's, if we got into fintech or something crazy, how can the brand sort of permeate different industries? But for right now, I think we've got, our work cut out for us on what's in front of us, and there's no reason to get distracted with anything too crazy. So just keep making things that make the world more awesome.
So switching industries isn't out of the cards for you?
Not at all.
Let me know when you start a video production company.
I got some, I was talking about reference points. I got some tough competition, so yeah.
Is there anything we didn't get to talk to that you want to kind of talk to or plug before we wrap up?
No, I think kudos to you for what you're creating, and I think you've got so much talent, and I'm a big fan of people like you that have the courage to just live their dream and do something pretty unique. So I would echo that, and I think a lot of the guests you'll have on this podcast, you'll be surprised because your reputation is pretty powerful, and you've got a very uniqueness about you. So just keep doing what you're doing, and I'll keep doing what I'm doing too. So
I appreciate that.
Cool.
Thank you. Well, thanks so much for sharing the insights, and this is extremely valuable to realistically anybody. Like we designed this to be valuable to young entrepreneurs and that sort of thing. But I think ultimately, as we go about this process, like you're discussing, there's so much, great advice. Everybody has so much to give, and their experience is one piece of the journey, and what they, that shapes the words they say. But I think it means a lot for people to hear from people at all walks of life, specifically,
Yeah, no two experiences are the same, and I think in a setting like this, you get to sort of remove the walls a bit and ask some good questions, and push back. You did a good job of asking a deeper question. It's like that sort of 5 whys kind of idea, and I think now more than ever people want to passively learn, I call it. So it's like listen to something like in a way that they might pick up a cue, or has a level of entertainment that's not some Netflix special kind of idea. So yeah, it's good. I think I would encourage anyone that gets to be a guest on this to just open up and share and know that you're helping somebody else. So
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.